male. That's why all of our town mothers used to be the mayors. When they met, it's called a Congress of Mayors. They still use the terms in reference to Mustangs out west when the females come together to prepare for the birthing season before the males come. They call it a Congress of Mayors, right? And then comes the stallions. When the stallions come, they fight. I want this flock, this Congress right here. Another use for the word Congress is sex, right? So they using our natural systems to rape us without our knowledge. They roofing us with false information. The town mother is the mayor, and the town mother is not selected by a vote. She's selected by birthright and recognition of the tribes in the town, right? And that's how we selected our mayors. The elections is the only control we have of politics is in local elections. That's election in the aldermen, city councilmen, depending on where you at. I forgot what they call them in the parishes, but they are all elected. Local government is the only actual true government on the land. Federal government is a fallacy. It's a fallacy, and it's based upon a corporate interim system occupying or pretending, masquerading de facto in law as the legitimate government agency, the dominant government agency, but they interim. That means they got a lifespan of how long they allowed to be here. You on mute?
Hold on, brother. What I want to get to right now is that I want to start talking about some other stuff because I've been hearing you talk about the aliens and stuff like that.
Which is one of my most. I hate talking about aliens and outer space, but I had to talk about it because
Yeah.
they here.
Well, there you go. And this is what I want to talk about. What do aliens look like? And what is the evidence that you have that say aliens have visited Earth? And have you ever seen or experienced a UFO sighting?
Okay, now let's break the question into parts because that's three questions in one.
Yes, go into it.
So, what was the first part?
The first part was, what do aliens look like? And the second part is, do you have any evidence of aliens visiting Earth? Let's deal with them too.
Okay, aliens have varying different looks. The only proof is that it's a ship sitting right outside of Earth right now that the Pentagon is watching, that they've been reporting on since March. They said they're sending out lesser ships to do reconnaissance, and then there's nothing that they can do about it. That's the first piece of evidence. You can look it up, right? The As far as how they look, they have a varying different look depending on where they from. Because the code for the human is not the code for every sentient being. The only similarities most of us have that makes them anthropomorphize is the head, two arms, two legs. Where you do got some that got 4 and 6 arms, and you do have some with 4 and 6 legs. But that's the exception to the rule. The general rule is for the sentient being, normally they come in with 2 arms and 2 legs and a head and a torso. So the general description in of an alien is anthropomorphized, but a lot of them look like me and you. Like we could be sitting here talking to one of them, and if he adapted to the language where he don't have an accent, you would never know he an alien. You would just think he's just another brother, right? They made a TV show, a movie about a brother from outer space. You remember that? the brother from outer space, because they wanted us to
Right, I
know
remember
that
that.
there is a sizable portion of them that's heavily melanated. Some of them melanin is so dark that it absorbs 10 times more light than the average person, and that's because of the deep space um, effect that it's having on them. And some of the suns set out so much radiation in the biological counter of most organisms to protect itself from massive amounts of radiation is to produce massive amounts of melanin as the response.
Have you yourself ever experienced the alien?
Um, yeah, but they normally talk to me telepathically and tell me they're there. I only seen a couple of beings that I know were aliens, and they was telepathically talking to me. One caught me in Walmart, gave me a book reference when I first came home. And then there was another one that I encountered at a mall where I was walking down the mall, and he was telepathically telling me, almost to me, you almost to me. And when I looked up, he said, "Oh, you found me." Right. So they don't look, those ones didn't look different than regular people, but they was from different places. But I don't
Mm,
tell people that stuff because I don't like to talk about space stuff because we have too many earth problems that we trying to escape from solving. We don't want to solve the problems where we at. We want to go somewhere else and take them problems with us and make that place as effed up as this place. But if we solve the problems where we at, we ain't got to worry about nobody from nowhere else.
hmm.
That's how you spiritually protect it, by solving your problems. Because if you solving your problems, the energy field around you, source is saying, don't mess with this one. He's doing his work. You always hear about that in the hood, putting in work, right?
Yeah,
Some of us work don't look pretty, but it's
right.
necessary for the effect that it's going to cause. So when we do certain stuff, it may not fit within the parameters of accepted norms. And we might even end up locked up for following our purpose and our path. And sometimes we just end up isolating ourselves because it's difficult to explain to undeveloped spiritual minds a developed spiritual concept.
Hmm. What is your view on the government stance regarding UFO sightings?
The government is 100% aware of what it is and who they is. They communicate with them. Dr. Strange wrote a book about when Eisenhower was visited by the Venusians, right? And that's when, in back in the 40s, and they, after World War II, and they dropped the bomb because that's what caused us to be put in what's called a light lock. Like, it's a covenant. It's to lock us into the simulation spiritually, but that's also to keep us from spreading like disease beyond our realm, all of the dirt dealing that the people been taught to do. None of it is normal. Even if we accept it as normal, it's still not normal to us as a species. It's been given to us by outsiders. And that's one of the easiest ways to heal yourself, is to find the foreign nature of the characteristic you exhibiting so you know that it's not who you are. That's how you kill your ego.
Is the
Purification of the
government
ego in
telling
the
us the
occult.
truth? Is the government being
Hell
honest with
no.
us?
The government is never going to tell us the whole truth. They give us half truths, but more than anything, they talk in what's called double speak, coded talk. Like, Donald J. Trump know exactly what an AK-47 is. Went on the news and he said I became a gun expert when they told me about the MK-47. That's a code. It's not a misspeak, double speak, right? And the code crackers are other heads of state has a code cracker. I'm the code cracker for Empress Rarebird, right?
Hmm.
She is the blood right descendant matriarch to call for to sit on the sacerdotal seat. And so when she went to Philadelphia, sat on the sacerdotal seat, she took back the tribal right, the political and social systems. So now what we about to see is the shift. But we first had to get to the part where, because I have to give her reporting. That's going to be live because I have to do it where all of the tribes across the land have equal access to the information. Whether they believe it or don't believe it is they're inconsequential to the fact that they had access to it by public notice. So the report that I got to give her is on the state of the war and with receipts.
Let me ask you this: these aliens that you have seen, that you have come in contact with, do they have any special powers? Should we be afraid of these aliens? What? Talk to me.
Look, you ever hear the story about the angels and then they fall on their face in fear in the presence of the angel? You don't
Mm-hmm.
gotta fear them unless you dirty,
Mm-hmm.
right? Unless you doing secret shit to hurt people behind the eyes of the unwitting public. You concealing your dirt and you doing nefarious things, knowing exactly what you're doing. The frequency is what's gonna tell you that you the one. Because when you're doing certain stuff, it shows in your frequency. They call it biorhythms. If you look up biorhythms, then what you do alters your biorhythm. If your natural biorhythm is to be in the heart chakra space, pure love energy, but you operating from the root chakra, you've been inverted. Once you've inverted, it alters your frequency. You don't look the same energetically. Like if you take Kirlian photography, you won't have what's called a pure color. It will be specks of darkness in your color. They can see it with their eyes because they see a larger light spectrum than our 0.1%. They seeing like 40% light spectrum. So they seeing you so deep you can't hide your secrets. And they telepathic. So now they listening to you lying to yourself, trying to convince yourself you a good person while you running around doing all this dirt. And now you trying to convince publicly everybody that you a good person. Instead of stop doing the dirt and be yourself, it'll come out whether you a good person or not. Right? And then they gotta always send in somebody to undermine
Mm-hmm. What technological advancements do you believe were inspired by aliens encounter? By aliens encounter.
you. Fiber optics was developed off the reverse engineering in Area 51 in the Roswell crash. This is already recorded and exposed, and it's already available under the Freedom of Information Act to be reviewed. Um, the cell phone is ancient. Most of the technology is ancient anyway. Atlanteans had all of the stuff that we consider modern technology, plus some you haven't seen yet. They were the pyramid builders of the Great Pyramid.
The aliens?
No, Atlanteans.
Oh, oh, okay. Wow, okay.
The Atlanteans also were space travelers. Well, we call them skywalkers. We didn't call them space travelers. The ancient term translates into modern English as skywalkers. So we
Mhm.
call them skywalkers. That means that they travel through beyond the realm of the earth. They got blocked out. They couldn't get back in because had to fight this spiritual warfare. Now the barrier is being removed and the skies are going to look entirely different. That's why they soft selling you all these extra moons and stuff. And then you seeing the soft sell drip in social media, people posting two suns in the sky, two moons in the sky, right? It was a time when that moon wasn't there, and that moon is subject to take off and leave if shit get thick somewhere and they need it. It's a battleship.
If the aliens encounter us during the pyramid age and then continue, then why aren't we developed?
We crashed civilization. Civilization was crashed on purpose. The last war,
When you say we crashed civilization, what do you mean?
I'm about to tell you.
Go ahead.
Okay. If you go to the sutras, the Vimana sutras, and it tell you about the Vimanas wars. Well, the last war was a nuclear holocaust, created the last ice age. It was at that point that civilization was wiped out because the disaster of war. That's called a crashed civilization. It grew to the point where it imploded because somebody couldn't get right. They couldn't bump straight. So the war break out. The war is known also in the Sumer as the Anunnaki Wars, the war against the sibling rivalry of Enki and Enlil. This matriculates into your biblical information, where they telling you about the fight that Enlil is having with Enki. They're calling Enki Satan in the Bible. They calling Enlil Yahweh in the Bible, and they calling Inanna Lucifer in the Bible. Right? The bright and morning star references the star called Venus. On the heels of Venus is the seventh sun, which is called Mercury, but not sun S-U-N, seventh sun S-O-N, but it's in reference to Venus birthing a son off the sun, right? Because between Venus and the sun is Mercury on the horizon. Mercury is always on the heels of Venus, and this is the baby that holds his mother's skirt as she follows her around. And then comes the great father, represented by the solar orb as Anu, Ani, Ra, the exalted one, Eliun, Eliun, El, right? Who shines his light to be a light among men, which is his light of the knowledge, the divine spark. And the one who receives the divine spark is the heir to the throne, or we would call him in Kemetic terms, he's Heru, the son that's aspiring to reclaim his father's throne, Osiris, the great Osirian, Orion star constellation, represented in the zodiac, in the Bible as heaven, right? Because the Greek word for heaven is Orionos. And Orionos is in reference to the star constellation Orion, right? So the son, who's mama's boy, because he's always following mama around, but he is the perfect reflection of the father, because even though he's following mama around, Papa's light shine greatly up on this son, S-O-N. So now the son learns how to become a man by examining the masculine qualities of the father. And the training from the mother teaches him how to tend to the needs of his future wife that she's going to pick. The fool's journey, tarot deck, becomes the hero's journey up on the self-discovery. Because he thought he was a fool and everybody else did too. But he went about his journey down the yellow brick road in search of the Wizard of Oz. The wizard is the wise one, Merlin the magician. Oz is the strong one, because Oz means strength. The strong one in the Bible is known as Chemosh. Chemosh is the god of the Moabites. The Moabites are kindred to both the Ishmaelites and the Israelites, right? Because who was Moab? Moab was Lot's son,
Mm,
and
mm.
Lot was Abraham's nephew, right? So they telling you your historical data, and they scramble it up. So subconsciously, you don't know it's scrambled up. Consciously, you following the narrative they gave you, but subconsciously is accepted because the subconscious mind don't know the conscious mind, don't understand what it's studying. But you studying Bible, basic instructions before leaving earth mean basic instructions before leveling up. Because once you level up, the Bible becomes obsolete when you realize it's a star map and a blueprint for the son to rise and become the redeemer of the Father. So John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. But what do you mean he gave his only begotten son? Because he didn't give him up to be crucified on a literal cross. But because you take the story literally, you never understand the deeper meaning, but your soul know that the story was telling you the holy drama straight out of the walls of Kemet, and that the Jesus
Mm.
is two people in the Bible. They telling you the story of the mother Isis as Jesus and her son Emmanuel as God with us. And they mix them up because you're not gonna know the difference when they put both of their words in red, because you don't know forensic profiling to separate two different people talking by character.
What if I was to say to you, Brother Rod, that Jesus is God? God rebirthed itself coming through the womb of woman to be physical being on the planet. Because before that, he's spirit. You can't see the spirit. But in order to be seen, he reborn himself coming through the flesh. What if I was to say that? What would you say, man?
Nothing.
Not would you,
No, I
I
wouldn't
mean,
even respond
is
to
it
that.
crazy? What? Is it
No,
crazy?
it just
Oh,
tells me what it tells. All you telling me is your perception of how you perceive this ancient holy drama.
right,
But
right.
because you don't know the original, you just took a cheap copy.
Oh, okay, okay. So I want to
So I wouldn't
let
answer it.
me let me get into this right quick. How do you differentiate between real magic and mere illusion? So now we're gonna get into sorcery, and let's talk about some magic here.
The science, the magic sciences do different things. The most potent and powerful of the magics was called blood magic, right? It's the
Mm,
what they call dashing the blood upon the altar, right? Talks about it in the Bible. The blood sacrifice, it every time you kill something, it has an effect somewhere in the living. And if you use the blood to seal the contract, you're talking about life force energy is sealing the contract. The contract's duration fades over time. So the blood and the blood magic ritual tells you that in the beginning, at its height of potency, the magic is very strong. As it wanes, it becomes faded as ink, and its potency also is fading to match the duration of the contract. because you have to have an exit strategy to all contracts. And the contracts that they making is between the blood that's being spilled, being sold to the loose beings. The loose beings can take physical form or they don't have to. They can use another agency of influence in the physical world to bring about the effect that your blood sacrifice required. Then you have the second most powerful magic is sex magic, because spirit energy and sex energy are twins. They Gemini twins though. The spirit energy is descending, is feminine from source. The sex energy is coming from the root chakra, right? It's red, it's pure lust. It's rising up. And as the two rise, they balance each other out into what's a pink energy. The pink energy becomes the manner of life, right? And the energy is represented by a balancing of spiritual self and sexual self. And the disciplinary training tool is called fasting, because you raising your energy and you are using your output energy internally in order to allow your spiritual energy to expand from the inside out, as opposed to only being coming from the outside. So you becoming one with your higher self through the process of sex or abstinence from sex. You can use both. A man and a woman who are in agreement and in balance with each other can manifest their best life together as heaven on earth, but there's going to be required a physical action behind the effort to bring it into being. And this is why they say faith without works is dead. You have to do your due diligence to meet the energy requirements to activate the unified energy and to bring about in the 3D realm. The desire becomes the realization upon the agreement of the gender, right? And because he can feel it, he describe it because he can see it. Left brain, right brain. As he describe it, she feel it, they project it out into the world. But remember, the mirror effect applies. That means it's going to be the same but different when you see it. It might not be exactly how it looked when you visualized it, but there will be key components that'll make it unmistakable that this is what you manifested. It don't always look like you want it to look or expect it
Okay.
to.
Before I go on, I was trying to figure out how to word this because I just seen it in the chat where they talked about menstrual blood is the
Mm-hmm.
first beginning of magic. So I want to say I was trying to figure out how to word the sentence to you, and I was going to say if women knew the power within their menstrual cycle, their blood, would they be better off today if they knew the power within the menstrual blood?
Well, you got to remember, in order to usurp the divine feminine, you have to, anybody that has passes on the knowledge, what's called Yoni magic,
Hmm.
right? You have Oshun priestesses in the Voodoo tradition that teach Yoni magic. In the European tradition, you have the priestess of Bridget or the priestess of Diana, who teaches the Yoni magic from the cultural standpoint. Then in India, You have, I can't even pronounce her name, Bhakta Shiva. She's the wife of Shiva, who is the embodiment of beauty, who teaches the women about the Yoni magic. And Kali Ma, the keeper of time, the dark mother, who keeps over the sacred dark places of the womb. And she purges it in time. And you can calculate it, and it's called the 28-day cycle, right? And the 28-day cycle is showing you the same cycles that we go through on Earth. They also go through in menstruation, but it's just played out on a microcosm to the macrocosm.
Hmm.
So
Now
they
you're
deny the women the ritualistic knowledge to access the uterus power in the womb. This is what caused the Salem witch hunts. A lot of us don't know the Salem witch hunts was because one of our big mamas was teaching the orphan females from Europe how to harness their yoni magic. And when the um, political figures discovered this, they feared that they would join forces and use yoni magic to conquer the enemy. So they wanted to kill him before they all got the full knowledge. One of the most notorious stories from the Salem witch hunts is the women who was in the dancing frenzy. The dancing frenzy is fully activated mitochondrial DNA. When it's fully activated, the women become contagious one to another, and the dance is replicated in the dervish schools as the whirling dervish. And the women who wore the white gowns by the riverside, who harnessed the yoni magic, who activated the mitochondria, who danced in the circle, reflected the sunlight, and it left light beams flying back to the sun in order to respond to what Earth is telling the sun in the 3D realm. So the women were harnessing this magic in order to have what's called the construct of heaven. And this is why you always hear him talking about the veil. The bride wears the veil, not the groom. And when the veil is lifted, the great mother is seen, as in the shrine of the Black Madonna. Madonna means young maiden. Black means she worked for Big Mama, right? She is the youthful representation of what Big Mama is. Big Mama is the older version. She's not Madonna no more. Now she's the Dark Mother, or what they call her, um, the Isis and Child. They got another name for it, but it's the mother and child. So the mother raised the son in order to redeem the father. This all in the magic. They have
hmm
to villainize the women because if the women become conscious of the knowledge and the Sufis is practicing the rituals to raise the mitochondrial frequency. Every mystic Sufi had a daughter that he taught in secret the sacred ritual to raise the mitochondrial frequency in order to purge wickedness from the earth. And so now those daughters, they called the daughters of the Sufi in the occult world. In the secret, they fall under the ancient Arab order of the nobles of mystic shrine, or the keepers of the great shrine of the great mother. The great shrine represented in the takeover by the Vatican, named after Vaticus, the sister named Vaticus, who they built the the temple on top of her graveyard or grave site, depending on how you want to call it.
okay. How does popular cultures affect the perception of sorcery? I want to get stay on that sorcery thing for a minute.
Okay, so look. In the society we live in, they call it a Judeo-Christian society.
Hmm.
What that means is they are going to use the Judeo-Christian philosophical standards of influence in order for the people to respond in a particular way. And this is what's going to be the driving force for the development of a society. As long as you control the creator gods and the ruler gods and how they react to creation, you can steer how creation manifests through the great egregore, which is the universal mind. It's like you hijacking it with the help of all of the other guys that don't know they're helping you, because you put circumstances in a path and you corral them like the farmer do the cows in order to get it from one part of the farm to the other, right? So they use what's called influence by having certain people speak on magic in a negative manner, right? And a lot of the types of magic are so vilified, and that's how they use the barrier of fear, which generates the common people's perception of what magic is and how it works, and that the devil is behind it. But you don't know that you the devil's agent because you're using his magic on yourself. That's called the Amen spell. That's why all of the religions say Amen after they prayer, except the Buddhists.
Have you witnessed real sorcery?
Yeah, I know how to do it, but I don't do it.
Well, they say that sorcery is evil.
No, well, it can be used for evil.
Hmm.
It's like what Darth Vader told Luke Skywalker about the Force. He said, no, what I mean, Obi-Wan. He said, Luke, the Force is neither good nor bad. It is the intention of the Jedi who wields the Force that determines whether it's good or bad. You can use the magic for constructive or destructive purposes, or you can just use them to sustain something, right? The Force doesn't care about 3D reality. Only 3D beings care about 3D reality. The Force encompasses and permeates 3D, but it's not controlled by 3D. But you, as one of the gods, have sufficient enough control to contribute to the change. And that's why you have this mantra, be the change you want to see, right? People just think it sounds cute, but it's a scientific underpinning to that. You have to get the attention of the other powerful minds who may be distracted by finding the common thread because they all link up. And the
Okay.
universal mind is like a spider web.
All right. Once again, family, we're speaking with our brother Rod Hayes. Rod Hayes is going in and breaking down this science, man. I love it. Straight from the head, too. Notice, I want y'all to notice that. Straight from the head. No notes. No notes. He got it all right here. So,
Stay ready, don't get ready, son.
that's right. That's right. Can sorcery be explained through psychological phenomena?
Yes. So Carl Jung was a psychologist. They call him the occult psychologist because understanding the archetypes is what allows you to be able to read those occult and sorceress type energies. When you learn how to read archetypes, then naturally, if you study in psychology, you're going to run into Carl Jung, you're going to run into Sigmund Freud. Freud is the father of psychiatry. And if you tracing back in the United States, you're going to run into Dr. Benjamin Rush, who was the psychoanalyst who created the methodology of oppression. They call it the Willie Lynch syndrome. But he was a early sociologists and psychologists who was writing about it. When you get to France, you run into Gustave Le Bon, who was studying sociology and wrote the book The Crowd. In this book, it tells you how to control the masses by controlling who the antagonist is and who the protagonist is, and how to pit them against each other to optimize the effect. Right? Now, when you studying that and you understanding that the sorcery is in the movement of the people, it's in the manipulation of the most amount of people by controlling the narrative of the information they receive. Right? So the count, once you know how the sorcery work, your spiritual self builds you a natural defense system. But because we don't never study the magic, because we think it's evil, we never develop the proper defenses, what they call in the religious world, Christian world, putting on the full armor of God. You have to learn key aspects of the magic and how it worked to protect yourself. And blood magic is why we were not able to break our oppression to the foreign agents that came over here, because they use a blood magic ritual in the blood of Crispus Attucks, the first to die, because you need what's called first blood. So that's why they make it prominent in the history books that you know who the first person to die in the American Revolution. Right? Because by knowing that it's Crispus Attucks, now you know something else. You know whose blood they wrote the secondary constitution in, the one that's sitting in the George Washington Masonic Memorial. Now you know who blood it is, and now you know that they did it because they books say the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled in vain. So when they put you under the spell and they made you believe that the blood of the righteous shall not be spilled in vain, and they constantly telling you that a righteous chief, he was in the position of right from the land, on the land, and he was operating in his proper capacity as a leader on the land, and they execute him. So now they have to write the contract in his blood, a blood oath. We gonna honor it spiritually, and because we honoring it spiritually, it's gonna play out negatively socially. So then that's magic influencing politics, that's influencing the minds of the most people. Because you got to realize the most powerful or the most influential tools for teaching people in North America is religion and politics, right? And entertainment. Entertainment is more apt to reach them than religion and politics in this era. But it was an era where only the religious stuff was influential. And the religious stuff was brought specifically to enslave you mentally and spiritually. And the only way to enslave you mentally and spiritually is to first convince you to put yourself spiritually under a spell that'll keep you from protesting mentally. This was done in the 18th dynasty in the war between the Amin priests and the Aten priests. It's known legendary as the Priest Wars. The Amen spell makes the God being subjugate itself by saying Amen. He's confirming that he will not outshine any of the people around him. But they don't know that. They think that it means so be it. But they don't study Egyptology and hieroglyphics, so they'll never know what it means. So when you tell them what it means, because a preacher didn't tell them it mean that, they gonna think you lying and you making it up. Never knowing that the preacher is just as deceived, if not so more so, if he actually believe that BS he be teaching, than the people he's talking to. And if he's deceived, that's called the blind leading the blind. Now, it was a time where the ones who know concealed it in the church, the AME. This is why all the brothers from the lodges was AME Christians, because they was finding out what's going on and they was passing the messages through the church. But when Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream became the prominent battle cry in the nonviolent philosophy of Mohandas K. Gandhi, right, became the battle call, they abandoned the secret traditions. Only a handful of them still know the purpose of the AME Church was to pass tribal information in the presence of the enemy, using what the enemy gave us to control us as a way to be defiant to the enemy's control. So they became seduced, never knowing that after Elijah Muhammad had that historical meeting with Elijah Muhammad, that he discovered that he had integrated into a burning house. Right? When he tried to tell them, nobody didn't listen, because all they still remember is I had a dream. They don't remember that long before Columbus came, we were here. They don't hear that part. They don't hear him saying that Europe came over and they undergirded their white peasantry with an infrastructure. Financially speaking, this is. They had what they call farm college grants, right? They don't hear that Martin Luther King. They only still hear Have a Dream, which was the least of his greatest accomplishments or speeches. But we don't want to talk about that because we want to follow the victim mentality, because we've been putting ourselves in this spell so long. It's embarrassing to find out that
United States Incorporated is defunct. The Federal Reserve Central Banking System is defunct. The United States Treasury now own the banks. So who's running things now, and what is that going to look like in the very near future, now that the old system is done away with?
So eventually they're going to have to make the public know about the transfer of government, the transfer of banking. All this has to be known. So they can't keep it a secret.
Okay.
Right? They have to come out and let us know. Okay. Donald Trump told the banks, he gave the banks an order to start what they call it, forgiving mortgages and credit card debts before the, I think, 19th. The inauguration is the 20th.
Right.
And you got a consequence for the ones that don't do it by that time, too, is in there, too.
So that would be, yeah. So public notice and implementation of that, what people are calling the Sara and Jasara, the debt jubilee, which, by the way, you know, we noticed that the Pope, who opened 5 doors or 5 portals, is calling those 5 portals or 5 doors jubilee doors.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very telling.
Yeah, that's for the 5 P's. It's politics. I forgot what they all are, but it's they got those 5 P's of government, right? And they use that 5 pillars. It stands for 5 pillars. The 5 pillars is normally in front of one of the buildings, the state building. Okay. The 5 pillars, because they use what they call 5 pillars of government.
Here's one. I don't know if this is right. The 5 P's of the SDG. Now that might not be it, but they call it People, Planet, Prosperity, Peace, and Partnership.
Yeah, that's the cover story. But they really use in the 9 areas of people, activity, and health.
Okay.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the 9 is also a P.
Right. The number 9. Okay. Mm-hmm. So somebody asked, does that include student loans too that have to be eliminated?
Yeah, all of those got to go because nobody's supposed to have to pay to get an education.
Okay.
That was already fraud to begin with. You gotta remember, the universities and the HBCUs and the Ivy Leagues are all owned by the Rockefellers.
Mm.
It was the Rockefellers' educational um, format that they was using, and they was using it also to enslave the people financially. That's what the whole student loans went from a class to be a doctor in the '60s. You probably was out about $8,000 to go to school to be a doctor in the '60s. Now you're gonna be out of probably close to $1 million.
Yeah, I was about to say several hundred thousands. I worked in a medical school, and them kids came out with $300,000, $400,000 debt. Medical school. That's not even including internship, residency,
Mhm.
and other programs. You know, if you wanted to practice certain parts and certain different
Specialty, yep, specialty
specialty.
training, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they know what they're doing because it's called the passage at $100,000. In order to get past that, you have to sacrifice so much it probably drive you crazy and make you do something to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But the people that can endure through the struggle normally reap the benefits of becoming a doctor and being able to pay that loan back and live pretty comfortable.
Mm.
But the average doctor is a C student. You gotta remember that.
You're right.
And you got doctors that graduate with D's, barely making it.
I
You
remember seeing.
gotta remember that.
I remember saying, "Oh, I would never want you to work on me," you know, to myself when I would look at their grades.
Mm-hmm. And then that's the doctors that they can get to do the nefarious work for the medical pharmaceutical companies. They the ones come in and give them all of the free medication to get clients hooked on prescription pain pills and stuff. They the ones that facilitate that,
Mm.
right? So you got other countries, Nigeria, you can go to school to be a doctor for free. Cuba, right? Why it cost so much over here? What's wrong over here?
Not only does it cost a lot of money, Chief, to get a medical degree, but the medical schools spend a whole lot of money trying to convince melanated people to go to doctors. When I tell you a lot of money, they give people who specialize in how they say closing the gap of health disparities millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because it's a problem with melanated people. You know, that most of us don't like doctors, we don't like hospitals. So they have campaigns to try to entice us to get medical attention. And people think that's a good thing, not remembering what the medical community did to us.
We're still doing.
Still doing.
But you got to remember too that outreach to our community that didn't come from the general practitioners of medicine. That came straight from the Margaret Sanger School of eugenics.
Okay. Okay.
It's the eugenics model to get us to do abortions because we used to wouldn't do an abortion no matter what.
Right. Right.
They've normalized it now.
Yeah, they have. They have.
Right. And so the outreach to get us to use their system. That's how they got us into this Tuskegee experiment.
Yes.
All that's carryover from Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
You got to remember the STD clinics is also an extension of Planned Parenthood.
Mm.
Right? In the early prenatal care that's done by the state, all that's Planned Parenthood.
Mm.
That was their model to get into every aspect of medicine to control how they poison us pretty much.
Yeah. Wow.
Yep. That's the same model, same marching orders.
Mm.
We didn't ever trust them people.
We sure didn't. Because
And we
in
had,
the day, go ahead.
yeah, and we had our own healers. So, well,
I was just about to say that.
we needed to go there.
Yeah.
They made us think that our healers was quacks and their healers was the real deal.
Mm.
That's their uniform system in the white coat syndrome.
Okay.
Right? You gotta remember, uniform commercial code. Everything must be uniform in order to appear to be legitimate.
Okay.
Right? The symbol of the doctor in the white coat is the symbol of authority that you're supposed to blindly follow. It got a name for it in psychology, and they call it the white coat syndrome. When you got people, if the doctor tell it to them, he could be 100% lying, and they gonna 100% believe him
That's true.
because he got that white coat on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that comes straight out of Machiavelli. To put people in uniforms so that they can seem more important than other people.
Mm.
And then you put medals and trinkets on their jacket to make them superior among the ones that wear uniforms.
Mm-hmm. So you're exposing a lot of these things, along with blood conjure wars and all this magic that they have used to cast spells on us. What's next? Now that you expose all this, what happens next? What are we supposed to do with this information?
Well, one thing is once you know that there's a spell and how it works and that you was a target of it, you take away the power of it
Mm-hmm.
by removing the secrecy.
Okay.
So even the people that's diehard Christians that heard the message, don't try to convince them.
Okay.
Because they blood gonna talk to them over time and wake them up. Every time they get ready to do one of those Eucharist communion rituals of eating their God and drinking his blood, they'll realize that that's a simulated cannibal ritual used to subdue the minds of the people. You can't unhear it. You know it now.
That's one of the things that woke me up. I was literally taking communion one day, and I just woke up like in the middle of taking communion. I was like, do you hear yourself saying, I will take the blood of Christ and I'm eating the body of Christ? But if anybody else does that, they will call him a cannibal. They will call him, an idol worshiper. And I'm not saying this to offend anybody. I'm saying this is what happened to me when I said, you know what? Something about this just doesn't sit well in my spirit. And I stopped. The moment I realized that I just said, this I said, now my ancestors, if my ancestors were to do this, if they were to, it reminded me of, what they say, people that practice voodoo, they drink blood, they eat the body of others, and I was like, but what are we doing as Christians? It just didn't sit well with me, Chief.
Mm-hmm. Well, we used the church originally to hide our standard rituals
Okay.
that we already did. You see them today as shouting in church. That came out of voodoo. That's voodoo culture that has nothing to do with the church.
Okay.
What they call speaking in tongues in the church over here,
Mm-hmm.
go see if you hear it in the Catholic Church over in Italy. It's not, they don't exist.
Yeah.
Because it's not Christian culture. That's straight out of the voodoo.
Okay.
Right? And that's actually an actual ancient tongue that most of us don't remember, but some of us remember the language, can translate it.
I agree. I've
Right?
been
But
in situations. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, but to us it just sounds like gibberish.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a language.
And it's literally a language. And I've been in situations where people were speaking in tongues, or what we called an unknown ancient tongue, in the church, and somebody would stand up and actually interpret it, and the congregation agrees because their spirit agrees with the interpreter. And I thought, wow, that's so powerful.
And that do not come from the Christian church.
Okay.
So speaking in tongues in the Bible is the ability to speak foreign languages.
Mm-hmm.
Linguistics. The word that they translate as tongues is lingua.
Okay.
So linguistics, just the tone, the texture of the voice.
Mm.
Right. So the language of the foreign people, they got a different texture.
Okay.
Spanish people roll their R's off the front of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Arabic people comes from the deep part of their throat with their ka sounds. Right? Two different parts of the tongue is primarily used. So you're talking about the difference in the languages.
Okay.
Right? And in the book, it tells them that when the Holy Ghost, when the Spirit came over the apostles, and they received the gift of tongues. They was able to translate the language of those around them.
Yes.
They didn't say they was gonna speak an ancient language that ain't nobody never heard in 20,000 years, and that somebody in the congregation gonna jump up that's tied to the bloodline that's gonna know the language but don't know why he know it and can't figure out why he know what everything mean, but he just gonna speak it.
Mm.
But in the voodoo culture, you can see that. In the Santeria, you can see that,
Oh.
right? In the Obe, you can see that. In the culture, it's there. It's already there. Been there. It ain't new. It's ancient. It's paintings on the walls all over the world of that same culture.
Mm.
But we can't equate the paintings in the wall because they disassociated from us to know that them was our ancestors that we was painting on the wall for you to remember who you was coming out of amnesia at the close of the age of Pisces, because they can't keep us
Mm.
perpetually idiots.
Okay.
So this is where they say that the Anunnaki was told to give it to the earth, give it all back
Mm.
by the
Mm.
Galactic Council. So if
Okay.
they had to give it back, then they had to find an earthborn heir that was the rightful heir.
Have they done that? Have they found that?
Yeah, it's 12 daughters, which is 12 major matriarchs. Well, it's 13 major matriarchs. The 13th seat is the sacerdotal seat, and the other seats are what you call regional seats for the
Okay.
12 regions of the earth beyond the seat of the Great Mother.
Mm.
You know the blood right because it'll be tied to finance.
Mm.
So when we tell them, like when I tell them about Empress Redbird, it's because they gave her the documents, the foundational documents that their construct was built on.
Mm.
They surrendered. Here, yes, she got the original allodial title directly from the Rockefellers, who was given the jurisdictional authority to write that BS.
Mm. Mm.
So once they gave her that, that gave the tribes the right to start to reconstitute across the land, go back to our tribal ways, go back to the oral tradition, and finish reclaiming everything by oral tradition.
Wow.
That's why I had the show in 2017 when they staked the totem pole in DC, because we can't take all of the land back without taking the embassy of the enemy first.
Mm-hmm.
Then this shows up on January 6th, where a native trained shaman sat
Mm-hmm.
behind Pelosi's desk with the law of the land flag to usurp the admiralty jurisdiction. That shut him down right there. He was there. All you got to do there is be there 30 seconds. He was there at least a couple of minutes.
Mm.
And he was sitting there with his feet up. That means that the territory is now occupied by the corporation is now occupied by the Republic. He's also a Marine Special Forces, white hat operative.
Okay.
That's what he was sent there to do. Put the American flag of the land with no gold fringes behind
Mm-hmm.
enemy lines, the Admiralty flag,
Ooh.
right? And then what happened? Sipico, the native out of Canada, put the Pope on public notice in native tongue, then translated it into English.
Mm.
And the Pope response was to rescind the discovery doctrine, which is the foundational doctrine of the whole incursion into the Americas.
Wow.
By removing the discovery doctrine, he also removed every treaty that's built on it.
Mm.
That means anything that came after the discovery doctrine has been nullified in law.
Mm.
So then, once that happened, right, and then the only thing I had left to do, I had to find Empress Redbird. Once I found her, she was able to time what I did in the oral tradition with receipts that they gave her as the response to what I was doing.
Mm.
So now Trump announced that all of the Black American tribes that was formerly not recognized will be recognized under this next upcoming administration.
Wow.
They also was holding Senate hearings about a week ago about the rightful heirs of the Cherokee Nation, because under the Cherokee you have different tribes that also have leadership hierarchy, right? But they got to have what's called a prime leader.
Mm.
They know who that is because they gave her the paperwork. So she can bring all of the tribes that wanted to unify and overthrow the corporate system can just tie in the Empress Rarebird and be back in business,
Mm.
right? A lot of us don't understand that this is ancient tribal tradition. Every 26,000 years, we go through the same thing to rebuild the next future.
Wow. Now, how did they identify Empress Rarebird as the one to whom to give these documents?
They've been watching her whole life. That's like they've been watching you and they've been watching me. And if you
Mm.
think they don't know who he is, then you naive to your enemy. They know who every one of us is. They following us from birth through our lines because they know who our mothers is.
Mm.
The only problem is they thought that all of the ones in my generation would be so gung ho about killing. We kill each other. It won't be one of us that'll be able to help.
Mm.
We the elders now.
Amen.
We
Absolutely.
we the elders now. So we got to do the job of the elders, and that's to tell all of the babies, they look, hold up, y'all got to stop killing each other for a minute. Y'all need to see this. This is what they
Mm-hmm.
did. I'm gonna tell you exactly how they did it. Who did it? I'm gonna show you dirty players confessing.
Yeah.
And once the youth understand that they need us to believe we from somewhere else, to
Mm.
disassociate us from the land, so that they can say that we surrendered the land to a foreign power on the conclusion of war. But when
Mm.
we telling them we know who we is, we was already here, we always been here, gonna always be here. You done killed us, fried us, fricasseed us, turned us into strange fruit, and decorated the South during the Christmas season with the bodies of the chiefs. You done executed chiefs, shot us down in the streets like rabid dogs. You done blew up our families like you did John Africa in Philadelphia. You done sent direct hits on certain people like you did Malcolm X and Clarence 13X, like you did Tupac Shakur, and like you did Christopher Wallace. We know what y'all did.
Mm-hmm. And you killed our babies in the womb before
And
they can get there.
and killing our babies in the womb and torturing the mothers.
Mm.
Right? They doing inappropriate birthing rituals that separates the maternal connection from the child, and then they separate the sisterhood. Because now the woman don't have a sisterhood to balance her energies against some healed women, so she can understand that what she going to is the side effect of them prematurely cutting her baby umbilical cord, and that her baby didn't really die like her chemistry told her, because she seen it, doctors wouldn't cut it.
Mm-hmm.
But because the baby never got to suck the teeth to circulate the colostrum through the umbilical cord for the chemicals in the placenta to tell the mother to let go, so she could send the rest of oxytocin while she watching the baby feed, stimulating the connection between mother and child. Proper
Mm-mm-mm.
parental bonding, pair bonding at birth. But when you interrupt the proper pair bonding, then the mothers go through a crisis, a caregiver crisis, where she can't not quite get her feet under her in her life.
Mm.
They know what they doing. They doing it on purpose. You can't tell me they don't know, because I wouldn't know if they didn't know.
Right? Chief, somebody wants to know, how can they find their tribe? This particular person, how do I find my tribe of a Hispanic woman born in Texas? But I think that's a good question for everybody. How can we find our tribes?
The first thing, you can go back as far as you can to a geographical region in your direct lineage. You're gonna run into a dead end because they burnt up a lot of files in churches and office buildings and libraries. They burned them down on purpose so that we can run into a dead end. But that ain't it. Once you get to the last place where you can, that's where they erased you at.
Mm.
Now you go to map, a tribal map, a pre-1492 tribal map. You can find one on Google. They got a whole lot of them. And look at the geography that you from. And then you can see the different tribes in the general area. You are 9 out of 10, your lineage will trace back to an admixture of tribes from that area. And when you go down there and see them people, you go be like, damn, some of them people was like looking in the mirror, they look so much like me.
Mm. Mm. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Chief, I have a lot of European friends who really enjoy this type of information. And then I have some that feel a little uncomfortable because they don't understand the necessity of expressing our concern about being lied to, that we are the, autogenous copper color races found here by Columbus. They don't understand
Everybody not supposed to. Everybody not supposed to get it. It's our job to get it. It's their job to watch it, what happened once we realize.
Okay.
Once they see that we realize the real lies, and they see us moving accordingly, we starting to come together now. Right? We started to greet each other different on the streets now because we in the awareness of that they want us to hate each other so bad that they put every kind of device or divide and tactic in our community.
Yes.
In the generation my mama came from, siblings was fighting over who the light-skinned sibling versus who the dark-skinned sibling.
Yeah.
And I seen my uncles and my mama and them having that conflict. I went to intervene. My mama told me, you stay out of that. That's before your time. You got a whole nother fight to fight. You ain't got time to be worried about who light skinned and who dark skinned in the family.
Okay.
And I was like, yes, ma'am. And I got a relationship with all my cousins that whenever we see each other, it's all love.
Yeah.
On sight. And we huggers. We huggers. So yeah, and ain't nobody in my family gonna hug you if they don't like you. They just not gonna do it. That's just how the whole family wired on both sides, my mama and my daddy family. We ain't finna be hugging people we don't care nothing. I ain't feeling you like that. I don't want you that close to me. But if we give you a hug, you gonna know we mean it because you gonna feel it. You gonna feel it.
I'm working on that. I'm working on that because there are some certain people that I know don't have my best interest at heart, but I'm like, just to save face, I'm gonna go ahead and grit my teeth and hug you. You know what I'm saying?
Ain't nothing wrong with you letting them kiss your hand.
Yeah, darling.
Yeah. Hey, look, Sophia Loren did it with her passing ass. Hollywood's first sophisticated lady. The most classiest out of all of the actresses. How do you get to be the classiest of the classy? Gotta have some soul in your blood, baby.
Right?
It's natural. Right? The noble character it betrays the royal blood.
They're saying kiss the ring.
Yeah. Look. And then you let your family know that if there's got somebody with them that you don't want to hug, you ain't hugging nobody. Your family already know what's up.
They really do.
They won't feel no type of way because they know that you don't just want any of your body infected you with their rotten ass energy. Let them kiss you. Curtsy. And let them kiss your hand.
You said curtsy.
Yeah. Hit him with an Abel Gabor, darling.
I love it, darling.
Look, ain't nowhere I've read a whole bunch of books of life and I haven't seen where it was ordered for nobody to be an ass kisser. It's not in nobody's book of life. Some people behave like it's in there, but it's not even in theirs. They just behave that way. Brown nose and the shoe shuffling for somebody to look at them and give them some favor. Don't give me no favor. I'm gonna find me a way.
Somebody said this. I'm gonna take this person up on their comment. Her Grace Empress Kia Pruitt. Darling.
Yeah, you ain't got don't mix your energy. Don't let them people contaminate your energy.
I can dig it.
Especially when you coming from the true place and the pure heart with no ill intentions, and you feel that nope, that's your ancestors telling you don't you touch that motherfucker. Don't let him be rubbing his nasty ass heart chakra up against your purified energy.
Ooh, ooh wee.
So you get seduced by vampires, blood sucking
Absolutely.
haters.
Mm, mm.
All vampires don't suck blood, some suck energy.
Wow. Wow.
They see you in a good mood, they ain't happy till you get pissed off.
True.
And you got people that live in the house with them and call them husband and wife.
Preach.
They can't. If it get peaceful around there, they unrest sets in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's not normal.